This video is going to cover word list management in Crosserville. I'll be discussing two main topics: using third-party word lists, so both importing and updating, and making local edits, so modifying word scores and excluding words. And in particular, I'm going to be talking about how those edits are stored and the issues that surround that. So let's start by importing a word list. In this video, I'm going to be using Peter Broda's word list for demonstration purposes. He has an extensive word list that he's been working on for years. It's frequently updated, it's free, easy to find online. I've previously downloaded it, so let's import it. To do that, you click on Word Lists, Import Word Lists, and select the file. There are 7 lines that contain some non-alphanumeric characters. I'm going to ignore those errors and import the rest. And when it's done, we come to this screen. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the Broda list have the top priority. And that just simply means that for words that appear in both the Broda list and the default word list, the app is going to use the score found in the Broda word list. And you can see that most of the words in the default word list are also in the Broda list. So his list contains about 527,000 entries. And the merge list contains about 531,000 entries. So there's only about 4,000 entries in the default list that are not in the Broda list. But that brings me to the first real issue I wanted to discuss, which is scoring and how to deal with an imported list that uses a different scoring system than the Crosserville default word list. So if you go to Peter's site, he talks about how he's chosen a score of 50 to be his cutoff of general usability. He recommends that most puzzles should have words that are just scored 50 and above. Now there's plenty of entries in his list that are scored less than 50, but these should really be avoided in general and only used if you have a very dense theme that requires like a gluey entry to hold your grid together. Now the default word list has a different scoring system. It's much lower. However, it's customizable. So let's demonstrate that. To customize your default word list, you click on Word Lists, Default Word List Info. So the words in the default word list are not actually given a numerical score. They're given a rating from A through E. If you want to read about how those ratings are determined, you can click on that button and it'll take you to the frequently asked questions page. What's up with the default word list? And here's a description of the different ratings. But for the purposes of this video, I just want to point out that really the cutoff of general usability is rating of D. So D words are not great words, but virtually every published puzzle has at least one, usually more, words that are rated D. So you want to make sure that your minimum threshold includes D-rated words. So let's go back to the screen. To have the default word list have a consistent scoring system to the Broda list, you would make D have a score of 50. And we'll make C have a score of 60 and B a score of 70. And I'll click close and it'll rebuild the merge word list with this new scoring system. Okay, so next I want to talk about modifying word scores. Now, in general, you do that during the fill process. So let me quickly create a new puzzle. We'll create a themeless puzzle. I'll use one of these templates. We'll use a 72-word template. Let's grab this guy. And we'll give it a seed entry at 17 across. That's what we have in our list. We'll go with the Carlton dance. And like I said, score modifications generally happen during fill. So we'll go to the fill pane. And before we do score modifications, let's add a global filter. We just have now a new merge word list that has that uses 50 as a cutoff of general usability. So I'll say add global filter, and I'll set a minimum score 50 for words of any length, and that'll get rid of a lot of the junk in the word list. So for score modifications, there's 4 different places you can make those. So let me quickly demonstrate those. The first is on slot option list. So if I click on find slot options for 10 down, and I'll start finding options. I'm just going to stop this. And essentially everywhere you see a score, you can click on it and change it. So I go to this list. VGA out has a score of 100. That's not a particularly good word in my opinion, so I'm going to give that a score of 40. And I'll change a couple of these guys. So if I click Find Slot Options again, because we have this minimum global filter of 50, those words won't be included. The second place that you can modify word scores is during autofill. So if I click on Find Fill, in this part of the fill pane, I can click on this score. And Hurst, well, let's give that, I don't know, a score of 60 maybe. And Norn, not such a good word, we'll make that a 40. The third place that you can modify word scores is on the word pane. So again, I see a score, I can click on it, change it. And the fourth place is on the lookup pane. So I go here, I see a score. Well, we've already made that a 40. Okay, so how are these changes saved? So word lists and any modifications that you make are all saved locally on your system in a storage area provided by your browser. So they live in some file on your hard drive. You can't actually read the file, it's encrypted, but it's persistent storage. So if you reboot your computer or you close your browser and bring it back up again, your changes will still be there. The other thing to understand about modifications is that they're stored separately from your word lists. So even though I modified a few entries from the Broda list, the app doesn't touch the saved copy of that list. Rather, it creates an override entry, which you can think of as an auto-generated word list in your system whose priority exceeds all other lists. And this structure is going to prove useful when I demonstrate word list updates. But because your modifications are saved in browser storage, you're going to need a way to export and import your changes. So you'll need this both for backup purposes and also if you want to switch to a different browser or computer. So let me demonstrate that. To manage your local edits, you go to Word Lists, Manage Local Edits. You can see that I've made 6 score modifications. If I click on this, it'll show me what they are. And I can export these edits, and it'll download a text file called Local Edits with a date stamp, which is just the words and the new scores. And I can clear my local edits, and I can import previously exported local edits. So I can bring those 6 edits back, those 6 changes back. Okay, so far I've just demonstrated score modifications, but you can also add sample clues. Now sample clues, they show up during the fill process, but more importantly they show up on the lookup pane, and they may serve as a reminder of a particular cluing angle that you want to use in the future. So let me just quickly demonstrate that. So I'm going to look up pane, I'm going to look up wine, and there's no sample clue as of yet. I'm going to give it a sample clue of Chianti. And when you do that, the heading shows up in red just to highlight the fact that you have a sample clue for this word. And like I said, it will show up on the fill. So if I stack the deck here, and on 11 down, I'm going to make it W blank NE. And if I go and find fill, I'll see that my new sample clue will show up here and also in the slot option list as a tooltip. And these sample clues are stored alongside your score modifications, and they're managed in the same way. So if I go back to manage local edits, you can see there's now one clue modification, and I can export both the score modifications and clue modifications as a single file and import it later on. Okay, so you can also exclude words. So well, some people actually kind of combine them into one step, and if they want to exclude a word, they'll just give it a score of 0. And you can do that. You just have to remember to always set a global filter of 1 or larger. But if there's a word you just want to, never want to see again, you can just fully exclude it. And again, there's 4 places you can do that, the same 4 places where you modify the word scores. So if I generate some slot options for 10 down, I can click on this red X and it'll exclude these words. And in autofill, I can click on this red X and get rid of agamas. And on the word pane, this red X. And on the lookup pane, I can click on exclude word and get rid of LA games is nice. We'll just leave that there. Okay, and excluded words are, again, stored in browser storage, so you need a way to export and import them. And you do that by going to Wordless, Manage Excluded Words. And on this page, on this screen, I can either I can restore Alaska, which isn't actually a bad word, or I can export my excluded words to a text file. It's going to be called excluded words with a date stamp, and I can in the future import that. And so one nice thing about having your score edits and your excluded words stored independently from your word list is that you can update your word list without losing any of your edits. So let me demonstrate that. To update a word list, you go to Word List, Manage Word List. Now, it depends upon Peter Broda actually publishing an update, but he has. And to update to that, you click on Update. So the first word list that I had imported was his word list from November of 2021, and this is the word list that he published on December 15th. So if I click on that and say Open, and I'll ignore the same 7 errors, it'll take me to an update summary screen, and it'll show me what the changes are. So there were 52 additions. There were 12 deletions. I got rid of sneb. And there were 123 modifications. And if you really want to study them, you can click on Download Diffs, and that'll download a CSV file, comma separated value file, which you can either view in Excel or Google Sheets, and it'll show you the list of words that were added and deleted and modified. And again, because your local edits are stored independently, they don't get lost during this update process. So if I go to lookup pane and I look up VGA out, was that word that we changed, you can see it still has the score of 40. Okay, so lastly, I want to briefly mention seed lists. So most constructors maintain a list of words that they would like to include in a grid, particularly like a themeless puzzle. And these are typically referred to as seed lists. You can manage your seed lists outside of the app, text editor or a spreadsheet application, and import them like any other third-party word list. However, you can also manage your seed list from within the app. And one advantage of that approach is that, well, in lookup pane, you can identify whether an entry is new or not. So, generally seed lists contain words that have not yet appeared in a published puzzle and are thus not in third-party word lists, and you can see that on the lookup pane. So if I go here and I search for great entry, I can see that, well, it's not found, and I can click Add to Word List and give it a score of 90 and a clue. And well, the first time I need to say create new word list, and it'll take me to a place where I can give it a name. I'm going to call it My Words. Continue. And that will create a new word list, my seed list. It's given top priority. It's currently got 1 entry. And again, it's stored in browser storage, so you need a way to export it for backup purposes. And to export your word list, you go to Word List, Export Word List. I'm going to give it a file name of .text so I can easily read it. And if I hit export, it'll just download this. And here is my new seed list with 1 line. Okay, so that's Word List Management 101. If you're new to construction, word list management is not going to be your first concern, but if you want to take that next step, it's definitely something that you're going to need to dedicate some time to. I hope this video will be helpful to some, and if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me at support@crosserville.com. I do love hearing from users. And thank you for watching.